Hello and welcome to another edition of The Big Question with me, Ian Pelham Turner, on ALB UK Television. Today I'm with Sandy Robson, who is a Harley Street hypnotherapist. Welcome, Sandy.
Thank you.
Today we're going to talk about post-traumatic stress disorder and all the current issues that are coming out about this terrible problem that people face. So Sandy, first of all, can you describe what is post-traumatic stress disorder?
Post-traumatic stress disorder is where somebody goes through a very traumatic episode or a series of traumatic episodes, and what happens is those traumas get locked in the fight or flight part of the brain, which is the amygdala part of the brain, and they get held there. And so consequently, as that person continues to live their lives, they start to suffer with insomnia, panic attacks, hypervigilance, anxiety, depression. So those issues start to present themselves in their everyday lives. They can, for instance, be out just, going shopping or be in a park or something and then hear a loud noise and suddenly they're triggered again. And that happens predominantly, I think, as well with war veterans. And I mean, I've been sort of struck so intensely recently by the what's going on in the news about war veterans, and for instance this Jamie Davis that has just come back from war maybe about a year or so ago, and I think he's been deployed like 3 times, and he committed suicide.
Gosh.
So his wife's been on the BBC News, a lovely lady called Alicia. I mean, she's just absolutely traumatised by what her husband went through, living with that when he came back from war, and then having to, deal with the aftermath of that, and the frustration and the upset involved in that for him not being able to find help. That help has just not been available to him. So
I remember talking to a veteran. He had problems. He had post-traumatic stress disorder, but he also had that need to go back to war again. And he was a guy in his late 30s. He had 2 lovely children, a wife obviously as well. But every day he would be looking at the news to see, is there a war I can go back to? And I remember him telling me that the most exciting thing in his life was to face a tank down, that was firing at him. And I remember another time talking to another wife, and she said, it's very scary for my husband now to drive a car, because all of a sudden we could have the children in the back as well, and all of a sudden we'd be driving down just a normal 20 mile an hour, 30 mile an hour street, and he'd put the foot to the floor and he'd be going 60 or 70 miles an hour, and he's not realizing it because he's getting out of danger. So are these really symptomatic of the types of things that they face?
absolutely, and I think that, like I said, they get triggered by just everyday circumstances. So I think this lady, Alicia, she was saying that, she would be in the park with her husband, with their 2 little boys, and suddenly they'd hear a loud noise and he'd go for his imaginary gun, thinking that, his family are in danger or he's in danger. I mean, those triggers become really, really powerful, and they can happen at any time. So, I mean, that, it's like I said, that trauma, it gets stored in the amygdala, and unfortunately, with the help that's been available, because I was talking to somebody recently about this, that he'd been through a similar situation, and he was saying that he's tried talking therapies, but they help to a certain extent. But the thing is, when you just start talking about a trauma, you get re-triggered. It just brings it up into conscious awareness again. It doesn't really heal it. So what I want to put out there and to tell war veterans or anybody that's, you know, it doesn't have to be war veterans, but anybody that's suffering with PTSD, that there is help out there. There are techniques, there are therapeutic models available now that can really get into that part of the brain and release those traumas in a safe, contained way. The person doesn't get re-traumatized. I want to stress that. It's quite important that people know that they don't have to keep reliving and reliving and reliving. They're living a hell at the moment, you know, if they've got insomnia or they're having nightmares or they're having flashbacks or, you know, they've got intense anxiety or depression. I mean, it's can be an absolute living hell. Not only did they go to these war zones and you know, live that existence, but they come back and then they're carrying that whole war with them, you know, and in their everyday life. And you know, it's doesn't have to be that way. There are solutions.
So so for example, like a car backfires and he was going for his gun. Is he seeing a flashback at the same time? Is there a particular moment in his head where he's seeing it, or is it just physically the noise? You know, because sometimes they may be, you know, it just may be exposing that moment in time of sheer terror that he faced.
There can be something called event trauma. So there can be, you know, people will remember specific events. So they will there might be visual. They might remember that event visually, or they might remember it emotionally, because there was no escape. So they kind of internalize it. People internalize it in different ways. But yes, that, I mean, basically, you know, that they can experience it, you know, through their emotions. So what I would do is I would go back to that specific event, get them to tell me what that was like for them.
Well, this would be under hypnosis, or?
Sometimes under hypnosis, but also I do other trauma release therapies. So they would just tell me what that memory was, or could be a series of memories, or it could be just going back to how it affected them emotionally. So we can go in different ways to release that trauma. And then it gets released from the fight or flight part of the brain. And so once that gets released, all the emotions as well that piggyback on that particular event get released too. So afterwards, after the process, it can go on working as it gets released from that part of the brain, and then it goes into the neocortex part of the brain and just becomes a memory, but without the emotional connection to it. So I mean, it might take a little bit of work. I'm not saying it can, you know, it can be done in one session. I mean, it depends how much trauma there is there, you know, but it is possible to start to release it and then come back into some sort of harmony and balance.
Do you find when they come to you they're distressed and depressed and that, you know, there's a feeling of helplessness a lot with these people?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, you know, it's that sense of helplessness, despair, you know, that there's no hope. But what I want to help these men and women get to a point of that there is hope. You know, that once you start, it's not cast in stone, it's not a life sentence. Once you start releasing and letting go of these traumas and the associated emotions, there is, you know, that light at the end of the tunnel, that you can go from hopelessness into hope, into positive expectation, into, you know, feeling lighter and more joyful and moving forward with your life. You know, when you're in that hopelessness place, it's very difficult to imagine or comprehend that there is a new possibility, a new way of being. But I can honestly say that I've been doing this work now for a while, and I've seen people transform. You know, all right, not so much. I haven't worked with a lot of war veterans, and you know, mainly I've been working with women up until now, but since I saw that story on the news about Jamie Davis, this is an area that I really want to start concentrating on.
What, working with the wives as well,
or yes,
the people
absolutely.
left behind?
Absolutely. You know, because the people left behind, I mean, not only did this lady, Alicia, lose her husband, you know, when he went off to war, she had to deal with that. And then when he came back, you know, she lost him again. You know, and that must have been really difficult.
A question I was going to ask you as well is, I mean, we've been talking about male soldiers, but obviously women are involved in battle situations now as well.
Yeah.
Do you find women can perhaps compartmentalise it in a different way? I don't know.
I think it all depends on the direct experience. I think with trauma, it all goes into that fight or flight part of the brain. So, you know, when you feel like there's no escape, you know, you've got to deal with something and there's nowhere to run, there's nowhere to hide, you know, that same part of the brain gets triggered. So I think it's the same for men and women, really. Because
I wonder at times, obviously not every soldier who comes back from war is married. Do you find at times that some of these people take a long time to even come to someone like yourself because they just think it's normality, they just think it's whatever, you know, is a situation? Yeah, absolutely. I think that people, when they're in such emotional distress and all of the issues that surround, you know, their past experiences, they're so mired in that sort of that consciousness, you know, that kind of despair place that they can't see that there's a way forward. And they wouldn't know. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, I'll go to my GP and I'll go and get some counselling, or I'll go and have some, you know, some sort of talking therapy. And that's great. I mean, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just, you know, that is supportive and helpful, and, you know, to feel heard as well. But also, I don't think people are aware that there are ways of working more deeply and actually pulling those emotional traumas, pulling them out from that part of the brain, and that they're, you know, that they can actually feel a sense of release and a sense of peace afterwards. As you know, we've created Positive Britain. You'll be on the platform, this video as well. So do you think there's always positive results from therapies like yours, you know, the types of services that you offer? Absolutely, absolutely. I've been a hypnotherapist now for 12 years, and I'm very passionate about the work that I do and the people that I help. And yeah, absolutely. I think that sometimes thinking positively is one thing and a very important thing, but also when, you know, being able to nurture yourself and take care of yourself emotionally as well. And that's where the work that I do comes in, you know, because we've all got issues. Everybody, you know, everybody walks around with some form of issue or illness or mental health issue. But I'd like people to know that if they feel stuck, there is always a way forward. And I think that stuck energy is quite a difficult thing to live with. I think, you know, all right, it's okay for a while. You know, we all get stuck, you know. But I always say to my clients, it's better to start walking up the mountain, you know, and see the view from the top, rather than just stand there looking at it, wondering, hoping that, you know, things are going to change. You know, once you start initiating that change,
there is the help out there, and you know, there are definite ways for people to feel more positive, to feel harmonious, to feel balanced, to feel alive again, to feel joy.
So finally, how can people get in contact with yourself?
Well, they can contact me on my website, which is sandyrobsonhypnotherapy.co.uk, through my website, or they can call me directly.
Right. Or you've got a Facebook page, I think, as well, do you not?
Yes, Sandy Robson Hypnotherapy, on my Facebook.
Great.
And my email is sandy@sandyrobsonhypnotherapy.co.uk. A bit of a mouthful.
Thank you so much again today for this. You know, you're a fabulous person and such a positive person. I always feel these positive vibes every time I interview you. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful. Thanks.
So for me, Ian Pelham Turner, the big question again, it's one of the biggest questions going on around right now is mental health issues and things like post-traumatic stress disorder. So it's always great to have an expert like Sandy Robson on board to actually talk about these things. You'll see this video as well on positivebritain.co.uk. So for me, Ian Pelham Turner and Sandy Robson, it's goodbye for now.